Karl Simon of Gates of Slumber. Welcome to 69 Faces of Rock. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good. I'm caught off guard here a little bit. A couple of months ago, I was actually thinking, when is the next Ratch album coming out? And then all of a sudden, I get an email from my publicist that Gates of Slumber are back in the picture. So, how did this band re-enter your life?
Well, back in 2018, I was rehabbing. I'd torn my Achilles tendon, and Chuck Brown, the drummer on the first two Gates of Slumber LPs, "The Awakening," "Like a Plague Upon the Land," um, he doesn't live too far from here, and he plays, of course, an Apostle of Solitude. I'm sure you're familiar with them.
Mhm.
And we've been friends since school. And he was coming by to say hey, while I was rehabbing and recuperating from the injury, and reminiscing about the first US tour, the first European tour, and just those old days. And throughout the entire time Gates had been broken up, people would email me like, "Oh, you want to do this?" And Wolf from Hell Over Hamburg had he'd asked several times if Gates of Slumber could, play Hell Over Hamburg, and I was like, "Well, of course, no, can't. There's no band." Um, but he still asked every once in a while anyway. And then one day Chuck leaves to go on to work, and I'm there, with my legs still bummed up, and Wolf sends me an email, just have perfect, perfect storm of coincidence, and the idea started to turn in my head. It's just like, well, it's coming up. Chuck was in the band. Um, we could do this, and Wretch was still a concern at that time, but my thought was, it's like, there's nothing wrong with getting together with an old friend and relearning a bunch of old songs, flying over to Germany, playing a festival, having some fun. Yeah.
No, not
it's
at all.
not it's not unheard of. And that kind of started the idea turning around. I mentioned it to Chuck, and he was fully into the idea. And we, as I got recuperated and stuff, we got together and started rehearsing, and one thing led to another, because we played together for years, and it was like, it's easier to come up with new things than it is to try to remember what the hell you did 20 years ago sometimes. So
Absolutely.
while we're struggling to figure out like exactly how things went before, it became, riffs started coming out here and there, and next thing you know,
Yeah.
like the
But I'm going back to the interview we did like last time in Chicago, and at that time you told me it's very unlikely that Gates will ever do anything
it was.
again. So what conditions had to be met in order for this to really start to become a reality?
Well, I mean, Chuck and I got together, and you know, Apostle is still a huge concern for him. It's his number one creative outlet. Not to speak for him, but I would assume that it is. And at the time, Wretch was something I was very much pushing. Had a new drummer, and we were trying to get back on our feet. And this was just going to be a fun thing that we were going to do to have a lot of fun. And that
Mhm.
was it. We weren't, you know, necessarily going to do a full reunion. We'd kind of jammed on some things and talked about recording, maybe reissuing records, but it just sort of fell together. It felt natural. And at the very, very outset, Chuck and I had arguments in the past, as you do. But we had moved past all of that. And one condition that we both, like, almost at the same time, was like, this is a no stress situation. We're not going to argue about anything. It's not worth it. It's just no stress, just fun. We're just going to make music, and we're not going to put so much behind it.
Mhm.
And I think that also is a function of being a little bit older. When you're a younger person, things mean so much more. And then, you get a little bit older and you realize that it really did never meant all that much in the first place. So, the conditions that we have were just like no stress, a good time, can't go broke doing it, like, uh, with Steve, the second guitarist in Apostle of Solitude, that plays bass in Gates of Slumber now. And it was just like, well, Steve, he can come right in. He knows the song. He can learn the songs that he doesn't know. And we can pick right up We don't have to, worry about if he's going to have money for the plane ticket or if he's going to need money on the road. He's fully sufficient. There's no stress and fun. Those were the preconditions. It's kind of amazing to me. I'd never had ever meant to pick the band up again, but it was just, when you're down really low and, you know, and a friend comes in and is just a presence there, somebody to just chat with, it changes things. And that whole period of my life was like, this was just after my mother had passed, and I was not a well man. I was
Mhm.
not having a good time. Um, and this, that the gesture of just coming over and sitting and shooting the breeze about better days was all it needed, really. And, I did some soul searching. It's like, what would Jason have wanted this? And then, of course, the screamer was Jason would never have stopped you, ass.
Yeah.
He would have probably. I never
Uh,
know.
where does this leave the Wretch at this point?
Wretch is gone.
Okay,
Wretch broke up in 2020. Yeah, it's over.
so that's done. Personally, what does Gates of Slumber mean to you?
Well, I mean, it was Gates of Slumber was me back, I started working on it in like 97, 98. Getting these the uh fetus fetal riffs, you know what I mean? These beginnings of riffs and these beginnings of how to do things, learning how to do this stuff. So in a real sense, it's like it's kind of going back home, going back to start in some senses. It's I guess it's like the Gates of Slumber is just sort of like my musical home base. It's like this this idea I had so passionately when I was young to do this band, and it's a band that had to be. It's a band that during its and this is going back to the old days. In the old days, it was like it was a learning experience, learning the art of compromise and learning that if you're going to be in a creative endeavor with other people and they're not making piles of money doing exactly what they're told, that you have to, there's give and take and a push and pull. So I hope that answers it.
It does, it does. So after being away from Gates of Slumber mindset for a few years, how long did it take you to regain those senses?
Um, Writing wise, quite a while. It's a difficult thing because Gates of Slumber songs, um, from the outset were always about topics, things. They were about like, torture or war or monsters or what have you, and Wretch songs were, and this transition started with the last full Gates of Slumber LP, The Wretch, which had a lot of more personal internal songs on it. And then the band Wretch, of course, that first album is dedicated to, as we talked last time, so much about like, the passing of my best friend, and the circumstances around it. And it was a very internal record and very internal music, Wretch was. Um, that doesn't work in Gates of Slumber. Like, Gates of Slumber is, Chuck and Steve both write, just as, Jason wrote and Chuck wrote in the previous iterations of the band. Um, and so, the songs have to be so many bands get back together after any length of time. And I mean, it's not like this was a huge length of time. It's not like, it's not like when Van Halen got back with Roth, for fuck's sake. It was like 20, 30 years or whatever. This was about a decade. But still, I wanted to go right back to what it was, songs about topics versus like, you know, me processing and writing about me in essence, if that makes any sense. So that was quite difficult to get back to a point where I felt like I was doing good work as far as like writing the lyrics and, and getting that going. Musically, it was a subtle shift as well. Um, Wretch had a lot more of like a rock and roll kind of swing feel to it, whereas Gates of Slumber is a little bit more legit feel. You know what I mean? It's not that there isn't swing, but it's like we were really trying to get, kind of bluesy and a little funky, a little jazz, not jazzy, but like definitely a lot looser, a lot more like Motorhead than, you know, than the like more the strict like doom doom like driving, you know, thing that Gates does.
One member, who will not be rejoining the band, is your old bass player Jason Mcash, who
Yeah.
sadly passed away in 2014. But what memories do you have of Jason?
Oh, he's my best friend. I mean, I think about him every day. Um, it's like I met him at the tail end of my teen years. There's that movie, that Stand By Me movie from the 80s with River Phoenix and Will Wheaton and all that. And there's that line at the end of the movie that you never have friends you do like you do when you're 12. And it's very true. But the further you get from that point, the less meaningful and deep I think the connections run. I mean, they change, of course. You fall in love, you get married. It's a world of difference between like a couple of young, guys, mates, friends that were just into nerdy stuff and hanging out and just being kids. And we kind of, I think, had an extended adolescence for a bit because it's just like even after he got married and had kids and stuff like that, it was just always about the band, going to the movies, getting some beers. It was just being big teenagers long past the time when we probably should have put it to bed. Um, I think about him all the time. Like a few months ago, went and saw that, like he was the one that would always, hey, there's a new movie coming out. We got to go, man. Let's go get some, they're going to go. And, I don't go to so many movies anymore. And, it's like went and saw that Deadpool and Wolverine movie. And it was like, I walked out. It was just like, eh, you know, it's over. I've aged out so quickly in the last 10 years, 10 years to do 20 years of growing up. It's just like, I miss so much about that guy. Just like, just having somebody that had been through so many ridiculous experiences traveling, it's like all my memories of like touring in the Gates of Slumber and all that, with the exception of like the very first European run and like the little mini tour we did with Reverend Bizarre back in 2005. Was virtually, there's nobody left. Like Bob is gone, Clyde is gone, Jason is gone. So I have these memories, like these very distinct memories of like, you know, driving across the desert, headed to Albuquerque, leaving Austin, because that was always this epic journey. There's nobody to reminisce with, you know. So it's like, and that was a big chunk of time. Like Jason joined in about 2002, 2003 ish in there. And, that was a decade you know, of just memories and building the Gates of Slumber and those tours and the ridiculous fights and arguments. And
Yeah.
it's all just gone now,
Yeah. No, I can completely relate. I have a friend like that who, even though he's an ocean away, he's still my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's people, I don't think people put enough stock in that. Um, you know, they're just having a solid friend, somebody who's been there for years and years and years that you can bank on. And then, of course, doing this band with him and like having that shared like dream of making this into whatever it was going to be. And it was, it was never going to be what we wanted it to be. We were too old. We weren't marketable. Like we had labels. Like when we submitted Suffer No Guilt to several big metal labels. I won't name any names. They came back saying that they loved the band, they loved what we were doing, they wanted to sign a band just like us, just not us.
Right?
Old, fat, bald, not marketable. Not marketable, and that to me was fine. I've never, like, I remember feeling like we were just fine. at the crisis point. Like I thought I was living the dream. Like we got good club shows here in the US. We could do a successful tour. We could go over to Europe and have great shows. You know, we could make records and sell them. And yeah, we had to have full-time jobs. Oh well. But Jason, I think in his heart of hearts, he always really wanted to cross over and get to that point where it was just like he wouldn't have to get up and clock in. He wouldn't have to do that. And I think it really just, and I mean, he had seen similar things happen in the past. In the 90s, he'd been in some bands that were almost there. And he saw like his peers go on to do more, but he never did. And I think that he was kind of embittered by that. And when Gates hit its limit, I think that kind of really just hurt him. And he was never quite the same after like the 2011 thing where it was just like, this is it, man. We're not Electric Wizard. I don't know what the magic is. I don't know what the hidden element is to cross over into whatever that world is. And, I've always been somebody who kind of believed in stopping to smell the roses and to appreciate stuff a little bit, maybe more than he did. And that's only become a deeper thing in my life since, is just learning to slow down and appreciate.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to do that.
Yeah.
So the new album, self-titled, that's a sign of a new beginning, isn't it?
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It's a reset. It's a, there was a guy who asked a few weeks ago, in another interview, he was just like, he asked what this record did to the legacy of the Gates of Slumber. And I'm like, the legacy of the Apes of Blunder. Well, it solidifies that the band constantly changed, because from record to record, the only two releases, well, there's two sets of releases. There was The Awakening and Like a Plague Upon the Land that had the same lineup. And then there was Hymns of Blood and Thunder and Conqueror had the same lineup. Every other record was a drastic seed change. Like the drumming style changed, everything changed. So this, again, it's like now you have Steve in the band who plays, he's the bass player, but he also sings, so there's now a man who's a better singer than me by far who's singing in the band, so yeah, it's just, we wanted to go with a hard like reset. We have so much behind us. And when we did like the European tour, because the Hell Over Hammerberg thing turned into a small tour of Europe, and I know that we'd thrown like, we played the show in Finland. It was like just before the world shut down for COVID, and we're playing, and this guy comes up to the stage, and he's like in the Finnish accent, like, "Man, you have to play Riders of Doom, man." And I'm like, we don't know it. This is not about that. This is about Chuck Brown being back in the band, and this is about our first two records. I promise you, to everybody out there, I promise you, we are going to revisit those songs. We're going to bring some of them back. They're going to be in the sets again. But we're not going to give you Conqueror Part 2 or anything like that. We've got our own like thing that's related to the past, and we're going to honor the songs from those records, like Suffer and Conqueror and all that. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. There are 6 tracks on the new album. Can you tell me something about those songs?
Yeah. So the lead song was musically written by Chuck Brown, and it's called Embrace the Lie. And I wrote it about, it's an aberration in the Gates of Slumber catalog. It's a song that's more based in current politics. And it's basically about, from the time that the song was musically written to the time when the words were done to the time when it's out, so much has changed. Like, American politics and global politics have been completely crazy, and it's reached a point you can look at an event and try to find through major news sources what is going on. And by the end of a couple hours search, you can find out that the truth very much depends on your ideological point of view. not the actual reality of what's going on. It should be a simple, this is true, this is false. But it's so very much dependent now on, you know, your politics and the
True.
politics.
Yeah, true. And I'm gonna give you a point. I'm originally from Poland, and I still check out Polish news portals, and even about similar topics that happen in this country, what they report quite differs quite, a lot from what is reported here. So I read both, and I'm trying to figure exactly where the truth is buried, you know?
Where is the truth? And the thing is that I the song is so much about how we are, you know, we have these little phones in our hand. I've got more stuff I've written about this. The world is we're being chopped apart into individual atoms and each of us is being fed a reality through algorithms that isn't the real reality. It's not what's going on. What's going on is out there. And to really be, it's just so crazy to me, because we're both older guys. We grew up in a time when you could turn on the news and know an event was going to happen, and the news was bound. If like if they needed to make a correction, they made it a correction. I mean, maybe it would even, if it was something particularly embarrassing to a newspaper, it would be on page 6 during the corrections bid, but at least it would get published.
Sure.
Now it's just like people fire and forget, and doesn't matter what the truth is. It doesn't matter whose lives get ruined. What matters is making a political point. And that to me is just fuck politics. Politics is very plastic, as we've seen. Shit changes, but giving people the truth, the actual real truth, is apparently it can be subversive to give people facts, and that to me is very, very disturbing. It's so disturbing. I wrote a song about it, you know. But that's the first track. Second track on the record, Steve actually wrote the words and the music for it. We Are Perdition, and he sings it too, which is super cool. Like, it's neat to just kind of play guitar on a song, and I really enjoyed writing and arranging it and just kind of being a guitar player. I do sing the choruses with him, but it was really cool. Just like, okay, because when we were writing it, it was like, okay, well, am I going to sing this or are you going to sing this? Because you've got these, he's just very, very good. Steve is like, we'll be at rehearsal, like working up riffs. And then next thing I know, I'll hear him singing into the mic. And I'm like, do you want to sing this? That'd be great, because it's going to take me weeks to go back and figure out, like, I don't know how to play. And he's just sitting there like, and I'm like, I I don't, I'm lucky I can, oh, my hands, I found him. He's very, very good player. So, he wrote and did all that. It's basically just your classic, like, humanity is the problem kind of song that I take from the lyrics. But I mean, you really need to ask him to get to the root of it.
Ooh.
And then the first song that we started working on, as far as like the record, was the next one, Full Moon Fever. And that was the riffs for that were they came together real quick when Chuck and I were just kind of banging out, like, how did we do this? And I got these riffs here, and let's see how this goes. And the idea of the song had kind of popped up around about the same time that Tom Petty died. And I know that it makes absolutely no fucking sense to anybody in the world, and you guys can just go ahead and figure it all out. Write me and let me know what you come to, But I dedicated it to him. I was just like, and I'm saying that's like Full Moon Fever. Well, that's
Amazing,
what. Hmm?
amazing record.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a fucking beautiful album, and this has nothing to do.
That's all you listen to?
Yeah. But lyrically, it kind of the idea of a full moon fever. Well, clearly that's a werewolf that fits right into classic Gates of Slumber monsters and stuff like that. So started out writing the lyrics, and it was kind of more of a Motorhead-esque, like tongue-in-cheek, like there was shit about like werewolves chasing your car and peeing on your fire hydrant and stuff like that. But as we got closer to it, I was just like, this is not how I want the song to be. It's like I want it to be a serious song, like, which I think that the so much is tongue in cheek now, and so much is ironic. And I wanted to go back to the pre-irony world, you know, and changed, ripped up the lyrics, wrote a whole bunch of new ones about, you know, like a werewolf who was a person who is a werewolf who was happy to be one, happy. It just made his fucking day to just couldn't wait for the full moon to go out and rip somebody to shreds. And yeah, it came together, and I love the tune. It's a lot of fun to play. I'm really very rarely am I ever. It also was like 3 years in the writing process. So if 3 years in the oven, if it's not done, there's something really wrong. I wouldn't change a note on it. I love the solo, and I never say that. Most of the time, I'm sitting there like, God, I can't believe I did that. I'm so stupid. Why didn't we take another take? This one, I'm fine with it.
It's funny you talk about Tom Petty. I mean, I always go back to my favorite Tom Petty lyric, which actually comes from the record that followed that, when he sang about getting a tattoo and meeting a girl with a tattoo too.
Exactly.
Can't beat
He
that.
was a sublime songwriter, not a heavy metal dude, but a sublime songwriter. Like great music, and just seemed like the kind of person that you would want to have at your local pub, like the guy at the end of the bar with who always kind of controlled the jukebox, you know what I mean? The old hippie dude there. It's like that's kind of how I envisioned him being as like a dude. You walk into your neighborhood bar and hey, there's Tom. What's going on, Tom? Play some Three Dog Night.
He
you
would
know,
do that.
he probably would.
All right. So what plans do you have to promote this album?
We're doing these interviews. I mean, right now, so in 2017, my mother passed away. I'd moved back home to help my dad take care of her, and shortly thereafter, his health started to really decline as well. He's 81 years old now, and he's got some pretty bad health issues, and I'm his primary caregiver. Like he's right next door in the next room. Band practice is tough, sometimes it's like, hey, I can't do it, dudes, last minute. And that sucks because, they've got to rearrange their time away from there. Chuck has family, Steve has a wife. Everybody has lives. And at the last minute, I like, guys, I can't. We're having a bad day. This is my life now. And it's been this way for a long time. And, we eventually will get back to playing out, doing shows and stuff like that. But for right now,
It's
this
not
is
enough.
it's kind of we're like the Steely Dan of doom.
Yeah. You know, there's time for everything.
And that's the way I look at it. It's like there's seasons in life, there's things, and uh, there's just realities that need to be accepted, and how you face those realities and what you choose to do with the time you've got. That's what you are. That's who you are. Um, you know, so we play like we're working on new material. We've got a split that is forming up quite nicely. There'll be more information about that in the future. I can tell you, it's got one of the last songs Jason ever wrote on it. We, you know, he had actually, well, after Gates had split up and I was working on Wretch, Jason had reached out to Chuck and was working on trying to get a new project going. And they had some songs that were demoed. And when, we were in the process of writing this, Chuck found those demos and we were like, oh, what do we do? This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. It's like, what do we do with this? Do we do anything? So we took one of his songs, and which was lyrically, I looked at his lyrics and I was just like, no, we're not going to write about this, because it was very much the song of somebody who was really spun up bad in what he was into. And it's like, we're not doing this. Ripped it all up. And in like 2015, 2016, I'd had a dream about him, very vivid, like, he came to visit me kind of thing. And that I kind of took bits of that dream and reworked it. And there's this song. It's called Revenant. And I love that tune. I can't wait to see it realized and be finished and out there. And it's going to be really cool, I think.
That's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, we're staying busy. We're going to be cranking tunes out and hopefully, you know, make up for some lost time.
Yeah. Finally, when you write and perform music, what kind of a balance does that bring into your life?
Um, in it can throw it out of balance. In fact, that's been the history of my life is that my my um drive to do this has so often in my life it's caused me to overextend myself to go to make decisions that put me in it have put me in a real bad place like financially for a long time, because it's just like it was everything for years in my life. I was unmarried, nothing going on. It was everything in my life, and I was just like eggs, one basket, there, done. um the new story of music in my life is trying to find a way to have a balance so that, you know, because it's out of balance now. Like now I'm not able to be a musician or anything like that. I mean, I am, but I'm a caregiver now. That's where all the eggs are now. Eventually in my life, I would like to hit a point where, I can play and do this and then also have everything else in my life. I got married this year and, you know, want to have you want to have it all.
Fantastic.
You don't get it all, but you can want
No,
to have it all.
always attempt.
You could try.
Um, Thank you so much, Carl, for speaking with me, and good luck with everything you do. I mean, you do a lot of great and noble things, and hopefully everything will balance itself out, and before you know it, you'll be recording and playing live.
We'll see. The future is it's yet to be written, so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for doing this interview, Mark, and thank you. Sorry we missed yesterday, man. I
Oh,
just didn't. Thank you for cooking up with me.
no problem. Thank you.
Have a great day.